Yes, welcome back to the biggest agricultural platform in Namibia known as Nduna Wengombe, which means headman of cattle. I am, of course, your headman of cattle, Mitch Mutumba Simata, aka the Nduna Wengombe. So today I'd love to touch on this, on the 6th of September. I'd love to touch on sugarcane farming. I'm sure we all know sugarcane, how it looks like, the sugary cane that we eat. And let's get into it. What you need to do, what you need to know when you're about to decide to getting into establishing a sugarcane plantation. So, before starting a sugarcane plantation, you need to know how much it will cost you. Most farming practices require lots of capital. This is way before you even start farming. Just to generate a hectare, you need a good 30 to 40,000 South African rand. This information is based on South Africa, by the way. Most of the farming, the highest cost of farming of sugarcane is because you need to buy equipment. Specialized equipment, by the way, tractors that are specialized to help you plow sugarcane fields, and probably sprayers also to spray pesticides. The other inputs needed over the time are fertilizers, insecticides, and pesticides. So those are the other things that will add to the expense. The crop is also labor intensive and adds to the high expense of farming it. When it comes to harvesting, you need cane cutters. So people who can cut your sugarcane. Sugarcane needs to be cut by hand, so you need a lot of people during the harvest season. So you need to get casual employees in harvest season because the cane has to be cut by hand. Make your sugarcane farming operation as effective as possible in order to save money, because as I mentioned, it requires specialized skills. It requires specialized skills. It requires things such as pesticides, fertilizers, and insecticides. And then on top of that, you also need labor. You need people to come and do cane cutting. This is now during the harvest season. They say climatic requirements for sugarcane, because South Africa has an amazing diverse of climate. There are a lot of unexpected crops that can be farmed in different parts of the country, such as in the subtropical climate, where a variety of crops can be farmed with. Sugarcane make up a good portion of these crops. Sugarcane can also does well in dry areas, in dry lands where there is enough natural rain or irrigation systems to provide enough water. So the thing of sugarcane is it needs good soil, but it can grow anywhere as long as there is enough water, and as long as you probably want to grow it in an area where there's good rain, you do that. If you want to grow it in an area where there's no good rain, but you got irrigation systems, you can also do it. It will grow. It's not really a touchy, it's not really a very sensitive type of cultivar, which would probably require you to plant it only in a particular type of soil. But they're saying that it can grow anywhere as long as the soil is good. So whether dry or wetlands, it's good to go. Also pointing out that sugarcane requires good soil to grow if you want high yieldage. So good quality soil is also important for sugarcane if you want high yieldage. If you don't want, you can plant it in terrible quality soil, and you might struggle with that. Sugarcane grows all year round, with the length of the crop growing cycle being different depending on geographical location and climate. In South Africa, sugarcane has a 12-month cycle and has been harvested and can be harvested anytime between March and December. So it is a 12-month cycle and can be harvested between March and December. This is in South Africa. I'm not sure, but then the climatic conditions do play. If you are probably in a wet, hot area, you might harvest faster than if you are in a dry area where you probably need to do a lot of irrigations. You might the wet, hot area, you might harvest it quicker than the dry area where you might need to do more irrigations. But in South Africa, they usually harvest them between March and December. Sugarcane is not sowed. So yeah, sugarcane is not planted with a seed. What happens here is when you guys harvest the sugarcane, there will be parts of the sugarcane that will be cut off. Parts of the sugarcane will be cut off from a previous stock and planted and buried into the ground. Buried into the ground. I saw a farmer, let's say these are two sugar canes. They would bury them forming an X like this, something like this. And then when they bury them, they would give them enough water, and then new sugar canes would grow from these stalks from the previous harvest. But I also saw those stalks need to have some little lumps on them. Those little lumps are new sugar canes that can grow out of them, and you just need to irrigate them. You just need to irrigate them and also give some supplements, supplemented with irrigation water. So that's very important. Then the other thing is fertilization application is one of the more expensive aspects of establishing and maintaining a sugarcane crop. So fertilizers, I believe probably your sugarcanes will require a particular set of fertilizer that you need to get, and this might also add to the expenses that they're speaking about. The sugarcanes are expensive. The crop also requires a comprehensive disease and weed and pest control regime. So another thing, if you're going to disease, this means spraying pesticides, I believe that, or probably medication for plant diseases. Weeds, you need to get people that are able to, if not people, you need to get a machinery that's able to drive through the rows of sugarcane, killing off the weeds, spraying maybe a herbicide on them, or probably replowing the ground just to make sure that it doesn't allow weeds to grow. The pest that I've seen in Australia is the sugarcane beetle. I know they tried to get, what is this toad? Was it the king toad? They tried to get a toad from Brazil into Australia to come and deal with the sugarcane beetle, but then the problem was the sugarcane beetle sits up the stalk and the frog lives on the ground. So the frogs didn't actually get rid of the beetles. I think they had to rely on pesticides. And other frogs have become endemic to Australia. The king toad. You should check that out. As mentioned before, sugarcane needs to be cut manually when harvesting. This means that harvesting can take a long time and is very labor intensive. But I read somewhere that there is machinery nowadays that can do the harvesting of sugarcane. I believe in South Africa they're still using the labor intensive way, but in other parts of the world they've actually started adding the machinery that can get into your sugarcane fields and actually cut it mechanically. Yeah, there is machinery, actually a tractor, a harvester of sugarcane that cuts the cane stalks, and actually from cutting them, it actually pushes them into the, it actually puts them into the truck right next. There'll be two trucks driving to each other. There'll be the harvester, the one that cuts, and then there'll be the one where the sugarcane that's being cut is being poured into. So there is mechanical, but in South Africa they're still using labor intensive. Hiring temporary workers that will come into the farm and come do the cutting of the sugarcane, and that is something that is still happening in South Africa. But in parts of the world they have actually started changing that. They're using more mechanical means to harvest sugarcane. Then the other thing that is mentioned is one of the things you must make sure. It is one of the things that you need to make sure is when the sugarcane is cut. When the sugarcane is cut and is being harvested, the sugarcane after being harvested is collected and is taken straight to the mill. Another thing that I also want to put in there that I have seen when people get ready to harvest sugarcane, they burn it. I think them burning the sugarcane helps. Correction, I'm speaking under correction here, guys. The reason they burn it, they say farmers burn sugarcane crops before harvesting to remove the leaves and the tops of the sugarcane plant, leaving only the sugar bear stalk to be harvested. So that's how they go about it. They burn the sugarcane to get rid of the leaves and the other things that grow onto the sugarcane, just to leave the stalk itself. So that is what they need to harvest. But I'm seeing that a lot of environmental bodies are actually coming out against it and saying that farmers should stop doing the burning of the sugarcane. There should be a much more environmental friendly one. I've also read about some mills in South Africa actually buy the sugarcane with all its leaves and everything, and then they go do it there. They go do it at their miller. So some millers just want you to chop the stalk off with all its leaves and everything and just deliver it to them. They will remove the leaves and so forth. So technology is evolving on better ways, because the burning method, which is still very popular, is terrible because it have a negative impact on the environment and so forth. So another reason why the sugar needs to be delivered fresh, this is because the sugar mills pay for this is because the millers pay for sucrose. Sucrose in the cane, and and the longer the cane lies in the sun, the more it might break down the sucrose of the sugar cane. So they need it fresh. Once it's cut down, once it's burned and then cut down, it needs to be delivered as soon as possible to the miller so they can get to that sucrose, which is glucose. I believe it's glucose. That's the sugar they need. And then when the market for sugarcane, this is the key component that is given here. Before you even go ahead to start planting sugarcane, or you want to start up a sugarcane plantation or start a sugarcane farm, make sure you know who are the people that are going to buy it from you. Are the people who are going to buy it from you? Is there a miller within your area? Because you don't want to make a mistake of starting to plant your sugarcane cultivar on your farm and you do not have a place to sell it. At least South Africa, South Africa have a sugarcane body that helps sugarcane farmers, be able to access markets. I'm not sure in Namibia if we have one, but when you are planning to set up one, that's what you need to take into consideration. So sugarcane plantation is a labor-intensive business, in terms of the machinery. You need special-made machinery. You can't just use anything for sugarcane. Probably temporary laborers that you need to be bringing in for harvest season, but there's the machines now you can use. But then again, with the machines, it's expensive, so you're going to be playing around with that things. Is it something that you can do? I believe yes. Ourselves, when we lived in a house, when we were still living on the other side of Auckland Park, that side of the service, the side of Spa, we had a sugarcane plantation in the backyard, and we were eating sugarcane every day. So it is possible. I have seen people also here in the capital city of Namibia, Windhoek, plant sugarcane. All it needs is enough water. So then with that said, ladies and gentlemen, that is my 2 cents on sugarcane plantation. It's a viable business. It's a good business because, remember, sugar is something that we use in our everyday lives. It is something that is needed, and there is money to be made out of it as long as the sugar prices are stable. But then, as I mentioned, if you're going to start up a sugarcane plantation in Namibia, just make sure that you know who the buyers and who the players are of that market, so you can access them. With that said, I just want to say good night for now. Have yourself a good night.